So, folks, hello. Welcome to this afternoon's or this morning, depending where you are, webinar. We're going to have a deep dive into planning cycles. That whole planning, budgeting, forecasting area, which can go wider than finance, is something we hear an awful lot about. The latest technology advances making a big difference to. Now, I've always suspected a lot of it is hype, but I actually found something that is real here. Montego Pet Nutrition in South Africa really have taken planning processes and moved them so that instead of it taking days for things to happen, it's happening in seconds. So we're going to drop into that as a case study in today's webinar. So with me, and I'm Kevin Appleby from GrowCFO. I've got Nico and Suneil Botha, who are the key people in implementing this in Montego Pet Nutrition. So you're going to hear about the story here right from the horse's mouth, the folk that implemented, the folk that had all the trials and tribulations going through this. So we can ask what went well, what went badly, what would you do differently if you did this again? All of those interesting questions when we get into talking about what this means in practice. And with us as well, I've got Eric Reyhle from Acterys. Now, Acterys is part of the solution, so Eric is on board here if we've got any technical questions in the end. And Eric is very, very close to the art of the possible in this field and is always a font of knowledge when we do these sessions. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to this. Just before we get going, um, a lot of you only ever come across GrowCFO when we do these webinars every couple of weeks, but we do an awful lot more. There's a GrowCFO show podcast comes out every week. We've got one-on-one mentoring available for CFOs. We've got our flagship CFO program and future CFO program. And then if you're a GrowCFO member, you've got access to a huge amount of learning content on demand. So please come along and have a closer look at growcfo.net, and you can find out all about everything else we do. But this afternoon, we are recording this, so you can watch this back on demand. So that makes it a lot easier when you're taking notes and so on. Please, as we go along, use the Q&A and send us any questions. If it's really relevant to the conversation at the time, we'll take the question straight away, but we've got 10 minutes at the back end of this for Q&A. So without any further ado, I am going to stop that screen share and say, hello, Nico. Hello, Suneil. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the webinar. And just before we get started, I've got a quick poll to ask you folk. What's your biggest planning challenge today? And this is probably going to go exactly the way we're thinking it will. Yeah, give folk a couple of seconds to answer, but I can already see that we've got planning dependency coming up on this, as spreadsheet dependency rather, coming up as the key thing here. Okay, I am going to end that poll with the folk that have answered. Share results. Spreadsheet dependency coming out top of this, and I think we're going to see an example here of how we moved away from that spreadsheet dependency to do something a lot better today. Nico is nodding his head quite happily that that's exactly what we're going to demonstrate. But Nico, as we get into this, tell us a little bit about you and Montego Pet Nutrition.
Thanks, Kevin, for the opportunity, and nice to have Eric on the call as well, and my colleague Suneil. Yes, Montego is the biggest privately owned pet food manufacturing company in Africa. It's a very fast growing pet nutrition business. And my role as data platform manager is to make sure our data analytics and planning capabilities support better and faster decision making throughout the company. So, in practical terms, we sit in a centralized capacity, servicing the whole of the organization across all data streams from a kind of decentralized viewpoint. And we need to make sure that we have the right platforms for our internal customers that is modern enough. So we are running on Microsoft Fabric as our data platform analytics ecosystem, of which Power BI is one of the tools in the box, and Acterys, the solution that kind of plugs into that.
Brilliant. But I know a lot of that is recent, Nico. What did the situation look like previously? What did your uh, technology and your, when I were talking in particular rebate planning, because that's the big one that you've implemented so far. What did that look like before this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So it talks to the outcome of that poll that you ran just a couple of minutes ago. I think the best way to explain this, I know Suneil is going to laugh when I say this. Excel hell, but it just rolls off the tongue. But it is exactly that, right? Um, we we had spreadsheets scattered all over the organization. Rebate planning was left up to each of the sales representatives and managers in the area to kind of drive that whole process and kind of run the calculation in isolation. And Yeah, it took forever, but not just the fact that it took ages. It was um, not a single version of the truth, scattered all over the place. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way, Sunal, is Excel help.
100%. Yeah, maybe if I can just add to that. I mean, I'm sure with the audience on board, if you have, obviously rebates it's a sales tool that's being used across, I mean, multiple and vast amounts of different sales channels, areas or companies, if I can call it that. Um, and especially around planning for, for certain rebates, what is your plan that you're gonna present, or, how you're gonna tie that in across, sales and finance? It's obviously very interlinked in those two areas. So on the planning side of things, I mean, if you have multiple sales reps, etc., trying to do the planning, trying to crunch the numbers to see, what is possible, what is beneficial both for the relationship with the client and Montego themselves. I mean, that becomes quite a lengthy process, just in regards of the planning side, getting the best deal that'll be beneficial for both parties. And that's kind of where the difficulty lies. If you have multiple manual, spreadsheets lying around, I might do some planning differently than Nico does the planning, and you're not always necessarily comparing apples with apples. And yeah, I think that also ties back into the Excel hell that Nico mentioned. That's kind of where we were before this project.
And it's,
Yeah.
it's I think sorry, Kevin. I think just to finally add on to that, it's that old age, Excel file version 50 final of final of final, right? And there's
Yes.
just no time to try to reconcile between files. There's no versioning. What is the accurate number that you need to present and rely on while sitting in front of the customer, right? And we said it's fast paced, so you don't have a lot of time. Otherwise, the opportunity is lost. So
I think that's a key point, Nico, because that certainly echoes back to most of my days in sort of working in FP&A type teams. That you would be on version 27.5, final version 1, final. By the time you got to that Excel spreadsheet, it had a real answer in it. And
Exactly.
keeping track on it, which one is the right one? Which one did we make that change in? Somebody asks you to reverse a change you made 7 versions ago. Well, which file was that in?
Yeah.
It becomes an absolute nightmare. And so again, different people around the organization, all the spreadsheets that are meant to add together in some way, it just becomes horrible. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But this is probably a typical area of lots that you could have gone at in the company. Why was it that rebates sort of raised its head first in this one? What made that suddenly strategically important?
Look, I know the audience on the call is um, is finance specific, right? And in that realm. And disclaimer that myself and Suneil aren't, finance professionals. So from an IT and engineering on the data side came in. So we can only talk to that extent. But I mean, rebates, it's a commercially important thing. Uh, Typical FMCG. We're a pet food manufacturing company, and everything's got a direct impact on bottom line, right? There's a direct impact on margin, profitability, forecasting accuracy, etc. So we wanted to give something not just from, I guess, a back office perspective, people sitting in the office, but giving someone in the field, the sales force sitting in front of our customers with the best toolbox or tool set for them to help make the best decision that
Hmm.
ultimately, drives the bottom line of the business.
Yeah. So what I'm really interested in there, Nico, is okay, we've established that we're in spreadsheet hell. Okay. How then do you work out what good looks like? How do you work out what you're going to replace this with? What can you tell me a little bit about the process you went through to figure out how to do this better?
Yes, so obviously we needed a solution quickly. So we went out into the market. We looked at various off the shelf products that were available in that space, and evaluated some of them. But it was a time critical
Hmm.
issue for us to fix. I mean, just thinking back to it, Chanel, you kind of flew down to Cape Town for a week,
Yeah.
like a very sporadic plan to just sit with key stakeholders in our company, driving the kind of rebates model, and uh, gather all the key requirements, what we needed to come up with a proper solution. And ultimately, we decided that because we had this solid Microsoft Fabric ecosystem with Power BI
Yes.
as a mature tool in our organization, um, I think Sunil, it was obvious, right? We had to build this
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing that also was a critical point for us in making our decision of, how are we going to build this out? What are we going to use? What's the technology stack that's going to go, with this is the fact that, you know, I don't know if I mean finance people can kind of relate when they start talking about sales. I mean, sales personnel doesn't necessarily want to, they want everything consolidated in one view where they have, actual data that they can look at of the customer, kind of see the whole customer portfolio when deciding on what will the rebate negotiations be or what will, the best deal be for them. And if you think about a financial perspective as well, is also that consolidated view that gives you the information, on one screen. You don't need to, open up an Excel, then do that, and then kind of crunch a bit of numbers in between, and then kind of get to an answer. So because we already have, as Nico said, the Microsoft stack, and we've already had, most of the reports that is required, um, that kind of walks, how can I say, alongside this solution, it was already built in Power BI. So it just made sense to give them the tool also within that stack. Um, I mean, it's you already have your answers. Well, a lot of the answers to your questions there, so it just made sense for them to kind of follow that journey, if I can put it that journey, looking at numbers, doing your kind of scenarios, and then getting your answer without having to jump around. So that kind of made the decision quite easier, because as Nico said, we had to kind of act very quick and build out the solution fairly quick. So yeah, I hope that answers the question there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to say, like, just to echo, just to wrap on this point, the 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 the, 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 comp, the complementary value of having that version of truth already established across our semantic layer with our data
Yes.
models, kind of it was half the battle, or more than half the battle won, right? And the missing piece was just the Acterys part of the custom visual that enabled us to do that write back mechanism. So we had the single version of the truth, we had the solid data in the middle, and 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 I think that's kind of how we ended up deciding to build a custom solution, because
Mm-hmm.
we were looking into Acterys previously, Suneil, for another use
Yes.
case. I think it was around HR budget forecasting as
Yeah.
a tool. So I think it all kind of came together in a very short time, um, but still allowed us to build an enterprise, class solution with all the controls and the governance and the scalability around that.
Yeah. Sorry, and just one more thing. I think also, just touching on Actors, what was really a key thing for us is, you have multiple salespeople working on this, and you don't necessarily just want to enter, one value, and then you first need to save, and then you move on. It's kind of like that, how can I say, that grid look and feel, where you can type out the entire thing, set your parameters, etc., and see how the data changes as you typing that, you know, your scenario, if I can call it that. And that was kind of a key part as well, where Actors helped us in that solution, because yes, you can do a write back or set up something in Power BI, but it's kind of like a one stop, you type something, then you first need to wait. It's not interactive in that sense, where you have multiple inputs required just to build out this one scenario on top of your data. And yeah, that's where Actors really complemented us in that space.
So, Eric, we're hearing three technologies here. We're hearing Microsoft Fabric, which is your data lake. You've got Power BI, which most
Hmm.
people recognize as a query tool. Eric, what exactly is Acterys in this particular setup?
Well, it's the missing ingredient, right? Because most organizations are investing already in Fabric, Power BI, mainly to get their single source of truth for analytic purposes, and then to be able to use Power BI as the visualization layer, the window pane into that information. What we at Acterys do is we add write back capabilities to Power BI. And it's when we talk about write back capabilities, not all write back capabilities are created equal. So from Acterys' perspective, 10 years of development on write back, and we're writing back to a SQL staging layer. And that
Hmm.
allows users within their Power BI reports to not only analyze to see a single source of truth, to see the information across the business, it allows them to create scenarios and change those parameters, update a driver and watch the model recap in real time, and very important to point out, this is done by not ever overwriting source data. There's a reason.
Yeah.
This is the reason for a SQL staging layer in between the Power BI reports and source systems. And wonderfully enough, if an organization has already invested in Fabric, has already invested in a single source of truth for analytics, there really is another place to actually start building applications, especially if you have the write back capability within Power BI.
Okay, gotcha. And that's the
Does
thing
that
for
help, Kevin?
a lot of people today. This term write back is quite possibly, if you're just Excel only and you're using a little bit of Power BI, that this write back is something that is brand new. So I'm just trying to get this in my own brain in sort of simple words. This is saying you can run a query, you can set up therefore a scenario, and then
Mm-hmm.
you put the scenario back into the database and run further queries on it.
Yes,
Correct?
that in terms of scenario modeling, yes, that's exactly what you're able to do with the write back capability. But I'll make it even simpler, Kevin. Imagine everybody I think is familiar with CRM systems, and I'll pick on Salesforce. But imagine if Salesforce as an application was just visualization of data. You couldn't add a new deal. You couldn't add a new contact to a record. That's write back, right? Write back is nothing new. It's just been missing from the analytic tools
Yeah.
all these years. And
Yeah.
so now by adding that write back capability to an analytic tool like Power BI, you're now able to edit data, to add new data, to save new information in a much controlled, permissioned, audited environment that also is segregating your source data it's protected. You're never overwriting source data by design if you're using it for planning. But outside of planning, when you have write back in Power BI, there's a litany of challenges you can solve. Montego's done a great job with the rebate. We've had clients that are building field operations applications. People are on the field, they're out measuring information, propane, or property management, and they input data into their Power BI report, and it fires executive dashboards in real time. So it's really just that capability of actually turning Power BI into a bi-directional tool. And if an
Yeah.
organization has already invested in that analytic layer, Fabric, etc., application.
Right. Okay, got it. You're breaking up a tiny bit there, Eric, so I'll stop you at that point. I've seen a couple of comments coming in the Q&A and the chat that the audio is echoey. Now, I'm picking up audio fine. What I would check, folks that are experiencing that, just please make sure you aren't signed into the webinar twice. That's usually the cause of echoey audio in a Zoom webinar. Okay, so now single version of the truth. That's a term that we've heard a lot so far. Nico, what does single version of the truth mean to you? Why is it important?
Um, so, I mean, in data analytics and in your data platform, single version of the truth is your gold. It's your gold layer. It's also making sure that, especially for us sitting as a centralized data team, servicing the whole organization, um, we need to make sure that all the departments and business units are looking at the same current numbers, looking at numbers calculated via the same logic.
Yeah.
All the business rule and assumptions are applied. And, just to bang on the Excel drum, there is no way that you can guarantee that if you have, um, you know, dozens and dozens of Excel spreadsheets flying all over the place. Yes, there are ways that you can share it with things like OneDrive or SharePoint, but I think, what is the best governed and the most confident number that you want to present if you're sitting in front of a customer who needs to make a decision that affects a sales transaction, right? And that was the non-negotiable part for us on delivering the solution on top of a single version of the truth, which was our gold semantic layer.
That I found out the hard way that is really, really important. Back in a former life, I took on a role with the London 2012 Olympics. I was for a while head of performance management. Now, this was 4 years before the Olympic Games took place. And we'd won the bid. We'd made loads of promises to the International Olympic Committee. Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, had made loads of promises to London about what this was delivering, over and above. Now, it was jobs for local communities, a lot of money going to redeveloping areas and so on. And all the time, the Olympic Development Agency was being prodded for information, questions being asked. No? And we got into a situation where we needed to know exactly who was working on the Olympic Park. Where were they from? What ethnicity were they, if possible? All sorts of things. And now I got to the point of putting together our data management system. And literally, numbers from my data management system were appearing on the London Evening Standard newspaper. Okay, Olympic Park employs X thousand individuals from Poland, for example, where we'd promised it's going to be X thousand individuals from this borough in London. So the information had to be absolutely right, spot on accurate, and you could not take the risk on two versions of the same number coming out depending on who you spoke to. So the single version of the truth just became absolute basics for that project. And I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm seeing this as being the way you get that single version. But hey, we've heard a lot about that selection process, heard a lot about why did you go for Acterys, that extra bit. I'm just wondering, is this time, Suneil, to give us a look at what this solution actually looks like?
Yeah, certainly.
So now I think let's maybe just start off with a disclaimer that we are going to show you bits of the solution, but obviously this is our solution in our business, which does contain certain IP and some level of confidentiality. So we weren't able to fully prepare an end-to-end demo for you, but I think what Suneil is going to show, and it's not going to be a long-winded demo. You will definitely get the gist. So I think, do you want me to kind of just set the scene for the business case that we kind of
Yeah,
presented Suneil, and
go for it, Nico.
and then you kind of dive into sharing your screen. So I
100%.
mean, we've said this before. We needed a rebate calculation, client incentive, what if analysis solution. The pain point for the business was the need to evaluate multiple incentive strategies. Is it 5%? Is it 15%? Is it 25%? And they needed to have that in a timely manner to understand what the impact on the bottom line was. What is that gross profit margin, number looking per client or per product? So the Acterys solution that Suneil built covered the following steps, right? Users enter the proposed rebate percentage in a report inside of a visual, the custom Acterys visual, or choose the different thresholds based on slices that she built into the report, which Suneil, you're going to talk to now, and then hit a button, and instantly the simulation runs on top of we spoke about this, the single version of the truth data that sits in our model, and gives that in a Power BI report, outputs the different versions of different discount strategies, while that sales representative is sitting in the field in front of the customer. And previously, I forgot how long that took them to do in Excel, but this is, and so now you can share your screen, you can show them, through the push of a button, those numbers are accurately, repeatedly calculated in the Power BI report.
Yeah, so maybe just to quickly elaborate on that. So I'm just going to show you guys, how we use the Acterys tool to set up these scenarios, and how already set up scenarios, stays there, and you can obviously edit those scenarios. I mean, as businesses grow and markets change and things like that happen, um, a scenario that worked a year ago is not necessarily a scenario that's going to work now. And with having those scenarios to know that you've already set it up, it actually makes it so much easier with you just changing a number or changing a product or changing the relevant customer of a scenario, because it might be more relevant to customer A now, and previously it was relevant to customer B. So things like that. So I'm going to share my screen and just show you guys how we've set up, the scenarios. Unfortunately, I can't show the whole calculation in the background that runs and does, all of the calculations to give you a yay or nay. I can't show that, but I'm just going to demonstrate how we use that to set up the scenarios. So yeah, just let me know if everyone can see my screen.
Yep, got your screen.
Cool. So maybe just to I know we are, the finance audience. So I mean, obviously rebates are set up with different attributes, right? So you obviously have a customer, and a rebate will go towards a customer. And then you have different attributes that can affect rebates. Whether if I just look at for example, retail companies, you might have a rebate on dairy products, or a rebate on, if you look at clothing stores, on um jackets, whatever. There's certain attributes that defines a rebate. And then you also have different periods for which rebates can run, right? It can be a month, it can be 3 months, 4 months, a year, 2 years. Depends on what your strategy as a company is. And that's all valuable insights that you want to put into your scenario, to see, maybe a month one is better than a 3 month one in a certain scenario, or maybe the other way around. And then there's all types of different attributes and stuff that you can put into these scenarios that will give you an answer to say, okay, yes, this is good, or no, this is actually quite bad. So maybe just to show a bit of Acterys. I'm not sure if the people in the audience have seen Acterys before, but I'm just going to take through how easy it is to actually set up these scenarios. And obviously layouts and things can differ. It's literally dependent on how everyone likes to see things. But basically it's this way. So here I am in a Power BI report. And it's as easy as, clicking a plus button and literally typing out names for your scenarios. This can be, whatever you want it to be. You can lock fields down, you can add additional things. Preparer persons can be drop downs to say, who is the person that has prepared this. And then, do you want growth? Do you don't want growth? Things like that, adding in that, getting other drop downs, adding in your percentage planned. Remember, this is just scenarios. It's seeing if it's a valid one or not. Deciding what is the periods you want to try and run this for. So this is kind of like the setup. Like, you have this idea in your mind, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And then it's as easy as just saving it. Um, and there's your first start of the scenario. Sorry, it's not going to show up at the top now. Um, and then from there, you can then further flesh out that scenarios by adding those attributes as I've mentioned. So whether it's customers, certain areas of your business, etc. And that's kind of how you build out the scenario. And once you are happy with your scenario, um, actually already in the background here by just literally typing out a scenario test. The model is already run and it's already starting to give you answers. So as you build this out, you can literally see, oh, okay, 10% is like way off there. Like I'm definitely not gonna do that. And you can already start fleshing out your scenario as you're literally sitting and as I'm talking to you, the team can already see, okay, yes, this might work, this might not work. The conversation is going in a different direction. Let's maybe tweak it a bit here or, whatever the case might be. But this is just a very short demo. I apologize for not being able to, give you the full show. But yeah,
No,
that
no,
this is
no. I think
basically,
no, that's great to know. I think it shows the report that we built. And then obviously inside of the report, the Acterys custom visuals sit, and those are the grids that you saw there. And
hmm
that's the part where the user, the salesperson, using the report, sitting in front of the customer, enters those different criteria, and those things are things that could be um, linked to your ERP system. We have D365 Finance and Operations, which does have a rebate system built in, but obviously, um, I think our situation was not unique. There is no one fit for all scenario. Again, not as a finance professional, but I think Suneil, going through this exercise, there are so many different rules
oh
and
yeah,
business logic that applies across, different products and customer segments in your business and whatever your business may be. That report takes that information and then writes that information that's inputted back into a SQL database, or I
yeah,
think you have options around the repository. And then our infrastructure allows us to then build that layer of calculations, or call it algorithms, in terms of calculating these scenarios and presenting the data back into that same
hmm
layer. So I think, no, thanks for that. It showed, I think, the essence of our solution as much as we could show.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you, Sunil. Um, so measurable outcomes. We've put in the headline, we're changing this process from days to seconds. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, Nico? What is that real change? Is that an exaggeration or is that actually spot on what we are doing here?
No, absolutely. I mean, for sales teams, being responsive, the biggest impact is responsiveness, the ability to make those decisions and accurate decisions and informed decisions in a commercial conversation for us. Not just the competitive edge, but, we talked about that, driving the bottom line, the GP
hmm
margin and what that affects. So, you know, this allowed us to be, in the forefront in the field, having the sales force, equip them with that tool, to not have to wait for, offline processing, batch processing, someone to uh, author and authorize that spreadsheet number version 52 final, as that's the one that we're going to proceed with. So just stronger visibility into the commercial impact of us calculating these rebates and putting that in front of our customers.
So you're in a sorry, Sunil.
Sorry, maybe just one thing to add there. I think also one thing that really helped. I mean, as I just showed the quick demo, you can actually preset, scenarios and things, and which really helped is, you can't always think of, of all of the how can I say, conversations that is going to happen. So you can plan for meetings or for presentations and stuff, but you don't always know where the conversation is going to go, right? And by having that tool, you can sit in a boardroom or wherever you are and tweak the things. And if the conversation goes one way, you can change your scenario to fit that and to see, is it valid? Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And have the conversation back to say, you know what, this we can rather do this or we can do that because you have the actual numbers in front of you and you have the capability of changing things on the spot and seeing what that impact will be. And I think that's really where the key in this lies is you don't need to go and re-crunch numbers or redo calculations. The calculations are set in stone. You just change basically a few inputs, if I can put it like that.
Which, if taking that then into, say, a finance forecasting process, I can see the same thing being true because you
Yeah,
will nearly always have, okay, we want to do this month's forecast. You nearly always have last month's forecast at as the starting point. So if you can very quickly take last month's forecast, pull in some actuals, make a tweak or two at an assumption, again, you're putting a new forecast together, first cut of a new forecast, you are putting together in seconds rather
yeah,
than days you might have spent or hours you might have spent crunching various spreadsheets together. So that
yeah. And
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I mean, even not just from a forecasting perspective or planning perspective, but if you think about budgeting, yearly budgets, yearly, 3 year forecasting, 3 year budgeting, strategic things, what needs to grow, what needs to not grow. Um, you know, even with that, it gives you that edge of seeing what will happen.
Yeah. And I've just put a poll up, folks, to say we're talking about a few things here. What planning capability would deliver the greatest value in your organization? Now, we're talking real-time planning in this case. We're also talking about ease of scenario modeling. We've talked about enterprise write back as well. And key thing here is cross-functional planning too, because we're talking about giving the sales force the tool, but that's it. We're talking gross margins and things. So what they're doing has a big impact on finance. Actually, Nico, tell me a little bit about that. How's that collaboration between sales and finance and operations and so on changed in the business?
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. I don't want to step out of line here. Obviously, we're on the tech side, but I think most definitely it has created better rhythm between the sales department and the finance department. So I think just the collaboration where sales inputs, and run the simulation and the what if analysis, and then finance also having a view on the same numbers, they can validate and oversee, and they were part of this logic. And I think
Yeah,
just to echo what Suneil said there, commercial planning, but also financial planning in terms of budgeting was critical. So I think collaboration a big one, and the fact that it's an enterprise grade solution that is fully governed end to end. I think Eric said it as well. Fully auditable. We live in an age of AI, and while we chatting in this webinar, things have already changed uh, so fast. It is crazy, but we are talking about finances and the core of your business. So that governance layer is critical.
Now, here we are, 45 minutes into the webinar, and we've had the first mention of AI. Now,
hmm
I expected when we're talking about this process moving from days to seconds, well, AI is going to be heavily involved in that. But this sounds as though you've just changed the process and you've put the right tool in front of people at the moment. That doesn't seem to mention any AI. So now, where is AI in your thinking?
Look, I think one of the key lessons out of this project specifically is it just proved that technology still matters. And yes, AI is, I mean, the hottest topic, I guess, since
Feb.
yeah, since Feb. We had that joke. But AI is just one of the tools in the toolbox, right? And context still matters there in your decision making, and you have to outweigh the cost and the risk and the implications. I think the short answer is it's definitely a tool that you can't oversee or forget. It's critical, but it's another tool in your toolbox.
And I guess this is showing that, you know, garbage in, garbage out. If you're going to use AI, you've got to get the source data right first, and you've got to get a good process in place first, or it's not going to do anything. Now, what sort of lessons have you learned as you've gone through this, Nico? If you were doing this again, would you do the same thing? Would you do anything different? What's the learning been?
So I think we've learned a lot about the technology and the benefits of having that enterprise grade write back capability in Acterys as a piece to the solution. So it was tough because in a fast-paced business like ours and the speed at which we operate, it is a tricky bit to balance that speed at which and the rate at which things move versus the governance requirements, especially working with the finance team. So I think adoption also is another point or a lesson that we can mention. So luckily we had a solid platform in the sense of Microsoft Fabric as our established data platform and Power BI as a recognized and a well-known tool within the business. But work with something that's familiar in your experience and something that has clear benefits to the business instead of just using something that's the new kid on the block or using something for the sake of it being cool or an interesting tool in your toolbox, like we talked about AI.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keep it simple, stupid. The old acronym. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now we've talked a lot about time in terms of the process improvement, but what about time in terms of the implementation? How long did it take you to go from the spreadsheet hell that you described through to having the new solution rolled out to people in the field?
Yeah, so now I think you can try to
Yeah.
keep me honest here. So it was a tactical solution, right? And speed was of the essence. So I think the biggest part or the lengthiest of this whole project process was the requirements gathering. Trying to understand, sitting with our stakeholders and the business to fully understand, what are the things that they use out of the box from our ERP system, and what are the things that are kind of added onto that as value-added services and value-added processes within the business. So I think that took a good couple of weeks. Suneil is a well versed in skills. He's very crafty in a trade as a data engineer. So building the report and the model in the back didn't take that long. I think implementing those algorithms or the calculations for the scenario planning, but also having to skill up on the Acterys bit, learning the new custom visual, bringing that into the solution frame was seamless. I think we had
Yeah,
the license keys for the visuals and then the back end of Acterys, spun up in. I think it took longer to finalize the commercials than get Acterys up and running. So yours, now I don't
100%.
know what number should be put on this.
I, I think maybe before we put a number on this, just to exclamate on Actors, right? Usually when you start exploring tools that give you such a broad capability, because I think that's something that isn't really realized until you start working with it and start, applying your mind to it, is that with with Rebate and with the capability that Actress has given, your how can I say, your imagination is essentially your limit there. Because you have, you know, your company's worth of data. You have this tool that enables you to write back directly in your reporting layer, which I think is very powerful. So it's really your imagination that is your limit there, right? And what I've really enjoyed working with Actors is it's not, you know, some extremely difficult tool that you need numerous and numerous and numerous of courses and learning in, I mean, in some cases you get a new whole coding platform or coding language that you need to learn just in order to use it. It's essentially bringing, tools that people in your data, in your, if I can talk to the audience in your company, works with on a daily basis if they do have Power BI and they do have a SQL database. I mean, it's tools that they're already familiar with, it's tools that they already know. And that really helped. I mean, the technical side of this, getting this solution up and running, technical side was, I mean, I would say less than 2 weeks to get everything from testing to running. Yeah, it's really. I think that's also an edge. I think on Actors side, right? It's tools that most data people are familiar with. Um,
So if
yeah,
I'm picking that up rightly, you said there's a couple of weeks of analyzing the problem, what do folk want, and a couple of weeks to implement. So you're talking about taking a problem that you've identified and being live with it in a month. So
very
we're talking
much.
a very, very short project here, which is that's impressive. So we're looking at quick solutions. We're not looking at big technology implementations that are going to take us 3 or 6 months or anything like that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I think again, just also, having looked at alternatives, off-the-shelf products, but we said that before, there's no one product suite that covers all your needs. So you're going to have to do some kind of customization. So on the ISV proposed solution, doing customizations is you're talking 3 to 6 months if it's on their roadmap, right? And the other thing is, like Suneil said there, it's a familiar tool. It's it's a bolt on. I think Eric said it the best, that missing ingredient. Yeah, the barrier to entry to this is very low.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, folks, we're in the last 5, 6 minutes of the webinar. Please take the opportunity while you've got folk like Nico and Suneil here with this hands-on experience of changing a planning process. Please ask them any questions that come to mind. Um, but one interesting one coming in, folks. Now we've talked about the user experience and an easy tool for them to use, but how did they react from moving away from something as familiar as a spreadsheet?
I think Sunel, just you showed it there. It was a slight glimpse in your screen
Yeah.
share and demo there, but it's the visual inside of your Power BI report, the custom visual, and Eric can also jump in here. But it does what's the word? It does mimic, or it looks very much like your spreadsheet. Columns and rows, that
Hmm.
kind of classic Excel grid. So. And we were also lucky that we've had a a well-versed and educated user base that were familiar
Yeah.
with Power BI and reporting and the usage thereof. So it was a well-mature product already. But I think the look and feel, it does resemble, and they also have additional features, Suneil, within the custom visual where you can open up, like basically analyzing in Excel, similar functionality. So
Yeah.
look and feel for me.
Yeah. So no real issues taking users away from that familiar spreadsheet. That's interesting. Yeah. Now, where are you going next with this? We've talked rebates today, but that's presumably just the first of a number of areas that you want to transform. What's next?
So I think this has sparked a lot of interest and we've picked up good noises within the business. Having rolled this out successfully. So I think we are looking to reignite the project in terms of HR, payroll, budget, and forecasting as our next project, and
Yeah.
using Acterys in the same manner.
And certainly people cost and getting that right is a big part of any budget. So I can see that. And that's you're looking for input probably across many budget holders to and pulling it together. So yeah, I get that one absolutely. I've tackled that problem myself using spreadsheet solutions, and it's not easy. Yeah, yeah. So Eric, now we touched briefly on AI and things like that. Where's this going in terms of the future?
Well, I think specifically on the AI front, thanks for asking that one, Kevin, is determinative AI. And if I'm not coming through clearly, you can let me know. But as Montego continues to use the application, month over month, year over year, and the historical data of various plans become populated within their single source of truth that is now being augmented by the write back capability through these reports. Now we're going to start talking about deterministic AI. We all know agentic AI, right? Talk to the AI bot, it gives you an answer, helps you explain things. Deterministic is what is the data behind this, and let's determine using AI models what the future could look like based on this historical information. And that's the exciting part of AI for us. I mean, AI is already incredibly exciting and widely being invested in and explored, but there are varieties of AI. And I think from our perspective, especially as the data becomes more mature and organizations are contributing into a single source of truth, that deterministic style of AI is going to become a huge component of how finance forecasts, predicts, builds what if scenarios. Let the machine build some what if scenarios. Maybe it does it 5 or 10 times and it spits out some information in terms of what it would recommend based on 5 years of history of doing this with the humans.
Yeah.
So
We as
it's
humans can spot some data patterns, we can spot some seasonalities, things like that. But if you really put AI into this and say, hey, go look at this data, tell me what typically happens. Oh, and we think this other factor's going to come into play. What happened the last time something like that came into play? And I see that is going to be phenomenally powerful once you've got the single source of truth that you can rely on.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I'll use we all talk about art of the possible and using our imagination. We have a client that's currently kind of obsessed with trying to find a P&L number for each individual going into a casino, based on the rewards. What do they pay for a hotel room? How many restaurants do they visit while they're there? And of course, where do they gamble? Do they win? Do they lose? And then trying to literally imagine a floating P&L number over every head on a casino floor. I mean, again, I won't call it a fantasy, but the simple fact that people are starting to say that the data is there and it's possible,
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting.
yeah, yeah. Profit and loss account per table in a restaurant. Yeah, that's starting to look mighty interesting, the sort of things you can play. So we're at the top of the hour, folks. Nico, Suneil, thank you hugely for joining us today. Thoroughly enjoyed this. Eric, thank you as well. I know you're joining us from an event in Vegas. Thank you hugely again. Thoroughly enjoyed the webinar. And folks, thank you for answering the polls we went through. I think we've gathered some really interesting data. And one of the things I'm trying to do in GrowCFO all the time is to try and say, well, where are we in terms of progression? We're hearing about all this new tech. We're hearing about AI agents. We're hearing about Power BI being able to do powerful things. But no, we asked today, how many of you folk are still in spreadsheet hell? Answer, most of you. And this sort of things are really interesting to know about. So, and thank you hugely for showing us how you can transform a process from days to seconds, actually without any AI, just getting the right systems and processes in place and sorting your data out. So once again, thank you, folks, and thank you, audience, for coming along, joining us and listening. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Hey, bye all.
Thanks, everyone.